Hi guys, sorry it's been a minute. I was in the process of moving, so sort of happened last minute. I waited till the last minute, and then I had to do everything super fast. So apologize. I don't typically like to go longer than 10 days, and that's pushing it per episode. I usually try to do once a week, and I had been doing the shorter form, as some of you might remember, so I can do a couple more a week. But then just life kind of, did his thing. And so yeah, but I will have a bit more downtime this week after my insanely stressful move. I will be on vacation. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to have a bit more downtime. So I'm going to be posting a lot more videos and putting out more podcasts, and maybe even try to sneak in a live there somewhere if I can manage it. So be on the lookout, and as always, appreciate you guys. I have noticed the numbers keep going up. That means you guys are sharing episodes, and it's growing, and I'm grateful for that. So let's grow together. For those of you who are new, one thing I always encourage is increase the speed. As I record a podcast, I sound like I'm speaking faster than I actually am, and then when I go to hit play, I'm like, oh my god, I speak so slowly. But just in general, I love for my listeners to get into the habit of doubling the speed. Every platform that you listen on, if it's Audible or YouTube or Spotify, even they all offer an opportunity. Even Netflix does this with shows on my iPad. When I'm watching, it gives you the option to increase the speed, so you can get through the information. Like, let's say it's an hour-long podcast. Well, if you double up the speed, you can get through the information in half the time. So it's like increasing the upload speed of information into your brain. Just makes your brain more efficient at taking in information. So I highly recommend it. And a lot of people have reached out to me and said, they really appreciate that, because some of them have focus issues, myself included, which is why I started doing this. I can't listen at regular speed anymore, actually, by increasing, and sometimes actually right now I triple the speed. If it's any slower than 3 or 3.5x speed, my mind wanders. And what I've done, or what I've trained my brain to do, is make a meditation out of an audiobook or a podcast. So every time I catch my mind wandering, because it's going so fast, I have to pause it and rewind it, and force myself to focus on the book or the podcast. So I turned it into a meditation. And as you guys know, meditation, there's nothing esoteric about it. I mean, it surely can be used for spiritual purposes, but for the most part, it's a focal exercise. So you can use audiobooks, podcasts, etc. as a exercise in meditation. And so I recommend that you guys do that, particularly with the podcast, because I do tend to be a bit long-winded. Another thing is, when you can't catch your mind drifting, hit that rewind button. Because every time you hit the rewind button, you're also going over the information. And what I say to you, what I say to my regular listeners, is that you don't hear something once and then that's it. Every time you listen to something, your brain becomes more familiar with it, and then more and more things become more familiar to it, and all of a sudden, it's just the more things, the depth and the nuances of the information that's packaged within a sentence, within a book. It reveals new things to you. So don't hesitate to listen to the same thing or watch the same video over and over again. That's how you're supposed to learn, right? So when you're a child, you don't and I repeat myself a lot too, because I want you guys to familiarize. I want your brains to be familiar with the concept, so that it becomes sort of second knowledge. So the first time your brain is exposed to something, your brain just goes, oh, that's interesting, but it's not really paying attention. The second time, when you hear it again, or you watch it even, your brain goes, oh, this feels familiar, I should pay attention. The third time, that's when you tune in, and then you start taking information in. So if you marry the two ideas, increasing speeds, right, and then listening and repeat to the same topic, that's how you learn. That's how you master things. As a child, you don't just learn the alphabet song one time and that's it, or learning a language. No. So how I was able to sort of learn, and I'll do this with PDFs even. I've done this. I will find a PDF of a book if I can't find an audio version, and I will read the shit to myself using voice memos to record it, and then I will play it back over and over and over again until it's second knowledge. Like my brain is so familiar with it, it becomes a part of my vocabulary. So part of this podcast is not only to inform or to share information, but it's also to teach you how to learn. It's not just to teach, right? Not to share ideas rather, but also to teach you how to learn, to teach listeners, subscribers how to learn, and share ways in which I've learned things like about quantum physics and metaphysics, even the nature of reality, things of that nature, typically subjects that most people tend to shy away from. And I know most of my listeners are women, which is awesome. I love looking at the demographics and just seeing that it's mostly women. And that like makes me feel cool. Like I love it. I heard somebody say that if majority, nothing against men, you guys are awesome. Thank you I appreciate the support of my male listeners. But somebody had once said that if the majority of your listeners are male, you may be doing something wrong. I don't know. So I don't know if I don't agree with it 100%, but I'm grateful to my, supporters. I went to a stand-up by Bill Burr, and he was saying, it was a joke, but it did give me pause. He said that, you go somewhere and you watch men, and no matter how, aside from the ones that fight each other, but for the most part, they cheer each other on and they look out for each other. And he kind of said or alluded to the fact that like the reason why the WNBA isn't doing well is because women don't support each other. And I thought that was kind of fucked up. I don't know if I like Bill Burr as a comedian, but I don't know if I agree with that rhetoric. The reason why the WNBA doesn't do as well is because women don't watch sports. Like we're not competitive in that way, not physically competitive. We will support the hell out of Rihanna though. Like we will support the hell out of like Beyonce. Like we will support the hell out of like a brand, like a makeup brand, a black owned business brand. Like, you know what I mean? So I don't know if that was a fair assessment. And even with podcasts and even on TikTok, like the majority of people commenting are women. And I'm so grateful for that. So anything I can share to help you guys break into, STEM and just into this field that seems to be complicated, but it's more creative than logical. A lot of what Einstein did was creative, and he wasn't particularly good at math, but that's telling. The reason why he did so well was not because of his math or his skills at math. It was because of his creativity and to be able to think about difficult concepts and to form theories based on information that he gathered. Some people have said he stole the ideas from when he was a clerk at a copyright firm. Okay, well, if the information is there, like, is it stealing? If you pull information and make it yours, is it stealing or is it creativity? That's when I paint. I pulled from different references, different faces to paint a face, to paint a body from old paintings. Am I stealing, or am I creating something from something? Right? Matter can't be created or destroyed, only modified. So nobody really creates anything from nothing. Right? We all have to work off of what already exists, and to create something new, but that quote new thing that's created is based off of things that already existed and have always existed from the beginning of time. And now that's what we're going to jump into from the beginning of time. I want to lean back into what I discussed in the last couple episodes about the nature of reality and about our minds. Not our minds, about our planet or plane, whatever perception, however you perceive this world, whatever the fuck you think it is, being. Also, I curse gratuitously if you guys are not. For some people who come from TikTok and I'm like, oh shit, I do cuss. I'm working on it. But I had talked to a male acquaintance, let's say, about my last video, and about not my last video posted today, but a couple of videos ago where I talked about our planet being, or plane being a neuron in the mind of a super intelligence. So everything, if all of this exists in the mind of a super intelligence, and the super intelligence or God, I had some Christians jump on the or religious people, not just Christians, jump on the TikTok and comment, well, if you mean God, why don't you just say so? It's like, well, what does that word mean? It's just a word somebody gave you to describe something. By definition, a God would be a super intelligence. A super intelligence would be a God. Their words are semantics. Don't miss the point. just to miss the point, right? Those are always fun. Not really. So if we all, to use easier terms, I guess, if all of this exists in the mind of a God, and every time we achieve singularity, right? And I've argued that when it occurs on this planet, it would not have been the first time to have happened, right? And I'm basing this on the premise that like it's a slow buildup, right? It's just slowly leading you guys down a particular thought pattern. The fact that the world, this planet, is allegedly 4.6 billion years old, that should tell you that we, more than likely, in the 200,000 years that humanity has existed in its current form, like Western civilization or whatever, the human Homo sapiens sapien, 200,000 years. All right. Okay. Let's take this back. Let's use money. Okay. If I made $200,000 a year, that's not bad. That's not bad money, right? But then Elon Musk makes, let's say, $4.6 billion. I don't know how much. I'm just pulling numbers on my ass just for scale, right? He's not. If he woke up, to use a comedian's joke, if Elon Musk at $4.6 billion a year, right, woke up with my money, with $200,000 a year, right? I don't make $200,000 a year. I'm just using the point as reference. He would not be happy with that, because if comparing 200,000 to 4.6 billion with a B, not million, a billion. Shit, if you made 4.6 million and you woke up with 200,000, that's scale, right? Now, billion with a B, that's a lot. Okay, so then bringing it back to Earth, that is a long stretch of time that we have unaccounted for. So to assume that that's 99 point, I think 6 or 7 points, percent of time that is relatively unaccounted for. To assume that we are the first civilization, we're not that special, the first species to get to this level of technology on this planet in the entire history of this planet is ridiculous. And I really want you guys to really start sitting with the fact that, like, honestly, everything that we're taught and we're told is bullshit. Everything that we are taught and we're told are bullshit. The reason why I can think the way I think and come up with these theories is because I had to accept that. I had to accept that what you accept as fact today, basically the 18 years that the 22 years that let's say 18, because obviously you didn't start school until you were 5. So let's say the 18 years that you spent in school at an institution of learning, most of that shit is bullshit. The older you learn, you realize that most of the stuff has been debunked. Most of the stuff is just a retelling from somebody else. It's warped. I watched a documentary on Netflix basically saying that it wasn't even the Allies that found Hitler's body. It was the Germans. Like, come on now. Yeah. And it was a conspiracy. I think it was called The Conspiracies or something like that on Netflix. But I didn't learn that. They didn't teach us that in school. Right? So, like, how much shit do you learn every day that you realize, was total bullshit? Right? But that's part of the awakening process. As we head towards a technological singularity, I've also argued that there is a singularity of consciousness that's emerging as well. This is a dual world. Right? So there's two. There is going to be a corporeal singularity, right? And then there's going to be a non-corporeal singularity, which is what people in the spiritual circles call, awakening, collective consciousness, becoming sort of enlightened. So you have enlightenment on one end, but of the collective. And then you have the singularity, which is a technological sort of enlightenment. And I'm saying that like it's happening simultaneously. And I'm also saying that it can't be the first. We're not that special. If you can operate from the premise that you're not that special, that we're not that, I mean, we're special, like every snowflake is special. Snowflakes are beautiful, but there's trillions of snowflakes, right? Each snowflake is unique and beautiful, but it's just like every other snowflake. So just keeping that in mind and then taking a step back and building up on that, the fact that everything we have been taught is a lie. Everything you know is wrong. Everything you know is wrong. Stop knowing things. You don't know shit. That is what I tell myself every day. You don't know shit. And that has been the most liberating sort of idea that I've ever had. If I don't know anything, then I can believe anything. And I don't even hold fast to beliefs, right? I just use the word belief so that you guys can understand kind of what I mean. I can think anything. I can theorize anything. My theory, so Charles Darwin and our present understanding of what he meant by evolution is warped, by the way. That's another sort of thing that we were not really adequately educated on. It's not what we have been told. Look it up. It is not like a progression. There is no evidence of this sort of progression from fit to less fit. That's not how time works. That's not how nature works. There's no principle of advancing complexity. There is no law of progress. Okay? But that is what people have been taught to believe evolution is. But it was his theory, and it is flawed. It's a flawed theory based on scant evidence. Right? Because once again, fossils, there's not that much of it. And a lot of what they needed to support that idea, there's no evidence. There's like very little evidence. Like, oh, we're looking for the missing link. Well, you can't expect me to believe this theory if you don't have any evidence to sort of back it up. Like you can extrapolate from like scraps of fossils and but and bone fragments. But because of the nature of time, anything that would allow you to paint an accurate picture of the entire history of this planet is gone. It's gone. So if a person like Darwin, and you need to read about him, I would try to find books that were written objectively about who he was and how he lived and where he came from and why he saw things the way he saw things. If you could get an understanding of it, you might take a step back from an acceptance of his theory. The way I look at it is this. It's not even like a state of arrogance. It's more like fact, right? A person like Darwin came up with a theory. He has a brain. It's based on his observations, right? And then it's something that has now been commonly accepted as fact, even though it's a theory with once again, like I said, not that much evidence to back it up just by the nature of time. There is not much there to back it up. Is there evidence of adaptation? Yes, there is. There is evidence of adaptation over time, right? But if you look at evolution, the way we have, not even the way he defined it, the way we have come to now understand it, these are two different things. To build up on that, they're two different things. The idea is flawed. The theory is flawed, and that's okay. But it's okay because what that tells me is that I can come up with theories too. I've got a brain too. I can come up with ideas of what I think this world is based on my research, right? Based on books that I have read, because that's all he did. He did research. He read books. He took in information and he created a theory. Same with Einstein. They created the theory. Well, you've got a brain. You've got a brilliant, beautiful, sexy brain, yeah? Use it and create your theories about what you think this world is. If you're wrong, you're fucking wrong. So the fuck what? If you're right, you probably won't know until you die. If then, right? So you might as well have fun. And that's what this is about. Let's talk about it. So to bring it back, I had an individual, like I said, he was an acquaintance, trying to tell me that my theory about this world being just one, possibly being just one neuron in the mind of a super intelligence. They said, well, I have a hard time with that. It seems to be an issue there with scale, in the sense of I just can't wrap my mind around something to that scale. And I was like, well, that's disappointing that your mind is so closed that you can't take yourself out of your physical form. That's so limiting. All right. It's called imagination. And this person calls themselves, a scientist, right? So they believe themselves to be, well-read and astute, and just knowing what's what. But it's once again, it's a role, right? I'm a scientist, so this is how I'm supposed to perceive things and how I'm supposed to think. And anybody else that thinks alternate or different than what I think and how I perceive things is got to be wrong, right? Because I need them to provide evidence of this, that, and the other. But you're forgetting that a lot of the things that we have been led to believe by scientists, like the concept of neutrinos, for example, or string theory, right, has no real evidence to support that. And yet men, countless men and some women have written whole books on essentially imaginary sort of, quantum elements, for lack of better phrasing. All right. So once again, if they can, so can you. Go crazy. Go wild. Think. I'm tired of having conversations ultimately about the fucking weather. I want to talk about the nature of reality and what it means. What are the implications if this entire world is a neuron of a super intelligence, and singularity occurs not once, but over and over again? What does it mean for us? I had somebody comment, what does it mean for the physical world? And I meant to respond, but I got distracted. And my response was going to be, it means nothing, because the physical world isn't really physics. It's not really physical. It's mostly empty space. It's an illusion, right? So it can blink out of existence and back in. It happens on a quantum level. So I don't really lose sleep, on that. Like, we will, and then we won't, and then we will again, right? Not to be destroyed. It's just, everything is a cycle, right? So here's what I wrote on my notes. I wrote, life is an exhalation, right? A breathing out. And death is an inhalation. So once again, scale, right? If this was the only time you did this, it would be weird, because nothing happens just once in this reality. We have to start really observing the laws of our reality and speaking to it. And I'm going to dive into that in the next segment here. But everything is a cycle, right? So you have the Big Bang, which at the Big Bang, that was a type of singularity. And now we have the Big Bounce, which is an emerging theory that said that the beginning, I always mention it, at the beginning of this reality, of this universe, was the end of another. And then we just stop there. Instead of going, well, shit, what does this mean? Right? Scale. The little 60 years or 60 to 80 years that you have as existing as this avatar is nothing. But that doesn't mean you're nothing. It just means your existence as this avatar. And once again, it doesn't mean that this is the only time that you will experience this existence. I always mention, every once in a while, I'll mention the writings of Anthony Peake, Dr. Anthony Peake. And he writes about this theory, basically, the eternal return. And most of his books, it's the same kind of idea that he just repeats over and over again in different ways. Just like your consciousness are an idea in the mind of God that just repeats in various forms over and over again. Yeah, think about that. All right, so I'm going to read some more. if I can find it. So time travel. So today I posted a video about time travel, and I basically want you guys to go watch it. In it, I said, time is subjective. It's not objective. I'm hesitant to say that there is no universal timeline. There's just a bunch of simultaneous sub-realities occurring right now. And then you just sort of experience different things, right? But that was harder to sort of blend together. So I went with a different sort of concept. And the concept is that you have your own continuum, your own timeline. So if you're going to travel through time, you're not traveling through this like general quote time, right? Of like what we think, like what we've been shown over and over again in movies and stuff like that. Oh, this is a time traveler. And then they just go to like random fucking places that they've never been to when they were alive, right? Or before they built the time travel machine, right? And so what I was saying is that if you go back in time, and I wanted to kind of expand on this because it was a short video, and I was hoping that some of you guys would come over from TikTok and listen to the longer form explanation. Time is like a memory, and everybody has their own sort of timeline, right? The reason why I'm not saying reverse time travel is impossible. It's just very short-lived, right? You are a conglomeration of collapsed wave function. And what I mean by that is the person that you are today, you're not quite solid. You are you're a quantum existence, right? So if I could look at you and I put on like, I don't know if you remember the movie They Live, but he had these special glasses that allowed him to see like aliens, okay? But imagine I had quantum glasses and allowed me to see people in their quantum states. You would see vibrations, and you'd also see sort of a tangled mesh of all of these like sort of like forms comprised into one. Every time you make a decision, you collapse a wave function. So you shift from your choice, you shift from probable realities, which exist as waves, right, into a fixed or like an actualized probability. So the probability gets actualized the moment your consciousness observes that reality. So it shifts from waves to particle. And that's what it means that's layman's terms, just the easier way it means to collapse a wave function. Okay. So if you, and this is just your entire life, it's just, okay, this choice, I made this choice, boom, I'm now this person, right? And you're constantly shifting. It is hard to conceptualize, but the more you expose yourself to it, it will click. I promise you. Okay, so let me check the time. Oh, it's not bad. Okay, so so you are now, as of today, in this moment in time, you are a conglomeration of all of these different choices and all these sub-realities that you have sort of shifted through. And you're kind of unstable, right? So if you built a time machine, you would have to be able to travel on a quantum level, right? It's not straightforward, as in like, oh, you got to go back. It's not that. Like, it's a hard concept to sort of conceptualize. Forward time travel is a lot easier. You just have to go figure out, well, it's not easier, but it's a little easier to conceptualize because you just have to go faster than the speed of light. And there's ways to do that. Reverse time travel is different and virtually impossible. I kind of wonder if it's something like the law of like thermodynamics, in the sense of like, for example, you cannot transfer cold to something that's, okay, something cold cannot transfer heat to something that is, that needs heat, right? It only works in one direction. Heat only works in one, and it's just fixed. Once again, a very simplified way of explaining one of the laws of physics is thermodynamics. So it can only go in one direction, right? If I'm freezing, right? So hot and cold are the same thing. They're temperature, more or less. But if I'm hot and you are cold and I touch you, I can transfer my heat to you, right? That makes sense. If you are cold and I am hot, you cannot transfer heat to me. That's not how, like, even think about it. Like, it doesn't work in that direction. right? Only works in one direction. And that's the same thing I think with time. And I have to be mindful when I say I think, because that's based on our present understanding of physics. Should a super intelligence be developed in our time? Or if it has been, I've argued that it is in existence or does exist in some future, the super intelligence would more than likely figure out a way to bend time or to travel back in time. But as for me and most scientists, they basically said, without triggering a lot of paradoxes and things of that nature, it's virtually impossible based on our knowledge and understanding of time. I think physically, I do think that if you are going to, this is my thought process, my theory, don't have much to really back it up, just more of anecdotal reasoning. I think reverse time travel is only possible on a non-corporeal level, either using like using your astral body, the way, people who practice astral projection have been able to essentially shift. These are facts, or facts as we understand them, right? So the CIA has written, you guys are familiar now with the release paperwork that the CIA put out late last year, I believe, on astral projection. Okay, so I do think that reverse time travel is possible, but only using your astral body. If you can jump universes, if that's true, and you can jump from universe to universe with intention, I think you can travel back in time with intention as well. But once again, you can only travel along your own timeline. That is the limitation. And I do have this theory that I've been playing with that I might have mentioned on a podcast like years ago, but I'll say it again. I think the DNA, because contained within you, now this would be a brilliant movie if the execution was done well, or even a TV show. I think that you can theoretically travel back in time using your DNA, but only through the physical forms of your ancestors. So you can only experience what they have experienced, and you can only experience time because your body is a temporal machine. So a time machine isn't you sit in a chair and then time spins around you. No, I think it's something that happens on a quantum level, and I think that you're essentially sending your consciousness back along your DNA. And so you can only experience what your ancestors had experienced if you have the DNA for them. Of course you do, because you're comprised of their DNA. But that would allow you, if we all came from one common ancestor, right? Then that should allow you to go all the way back, at the very least, to the beginning of, I guess, Homo sapiens, sapien. Or if the scientists are correct, you should then be able to go all the way back to the primordial ooze and everything that led us to where we are now. In theory, that would be what would make the most sense to me. But it would be a matter of you sending your consciousness back down your line, your DNA line, and then experiencing life as, I don't know, like I'm Nigerian, for example, but also have some slight Portuguese ancestry. Okay, so I could go back, but only to my great-grandmother, my great-great-grandmother, my great-grand, you know what I mean? And live and see things through their eyes, right? Experience life through their eyes and go through their experiences. But you can't change anything. Because if you make any change, remember I said you're vibrating. If I could put on my glasses and look at you, your vibration of sub-realities. Please watch the video on my TikTok channel. You don't have to have the app to watch it. Just go to tiktok.com/ at jolie.artist, and you'll see the most recent one. I think it says like you are something about subrealities, a composition of subrealities. Watch that one because it's just a quick background, but it gives you a little bit more of understanding of what I'm saying here. So that's what I think. But you would not be able to change anything. You would essentially be bound. I mean, more or less. Like maybe there's slight variations, slight changes that you can make, but you would essentially be bound to the choices that they had made. Can't do anything drastic. Otherwise, you in your present form would cease to exist, but only your physical body. Right? So a lot of people ask this question. I had to go in and comment so that people would stop asking the same question. Here's the fact. Somebody said, so I said, if you went back in time and made any changes, you would essentially unravel on a quantum level. And somebody was like, well, what if I go back in time and I change like the life of my neighbor or whatever? My response is, you cannot go back in time and change anything. The moment you go to make a different choice other than the choice you made, you unravel. So like, you are a composition of all of your choices, right? Think of Jenga, right? So choice here, choice here, choice here, choice here, choice here. Maybe there's some slight choices that you made that maybe doesn't affect you on too much. Like so like you can pull the little cube out, whatever it is, a little stick out, whatever, and there's some wobbling, right? And you'll kind of maybe get wavy a bit. But you're still there. But you pull something that's monumental. And the problem is you don't know, as a time traveler, you don't know what is monumental, right? So if you pull on the wrong block, essentially, then who you are in the present form, every choice you made that created the person that you are now will completely disintegrate. And thus your form would disintegrate. It doesn't mean that you would get wiped out of the memories of everybody, because then that's too much change. And remember what I said? It helps to start with the mindset that you're not that special. I mean, you're special like a snowflake, but you're not that special. So the universe, you will not allow you to change the entire multiverse because you chose to have, to make one little choice or do one thing different. That's not what I'm saying here. You would just die at that moment, right? Like you would just be considered missing or dead. Like you would just become a ghost. That's it. So the people who you interacted with, like, so imagine, let me use a very practical example. Today, April 15th? Let's say it's the 15th or 16th. Okay. So today, April 16th, I go back in time. I build a time machine in a second. I mixed some, I stuck my hand in, a bunch of wires and moved around, and all of a sudden, boom, I have a time machine. I'm full of shit. Like, obviously, for illustrative purposes, okay? So I just created a time machine. What am I going to do? I'm going to go back to 1992, okay? And, of course, remember, you can only travel down your own timeline, right? You can only travel down your own timeline. So I'm going to go back to 1992, and I'm observing myself, okay? So I'm observing myself. Like think about it, every movie, they do get this bit right. So Back to the Future in the movie, he goes back along his timeline. He doesn't go back to, he can only go back and visit people that he's already familiar with. So that's what I do. I go back to 92, and I see myself. And I watch myself making one choice. And I go to influence myself to make a different choice. The moment I do that, if I'm able to nudge my past self off of making one choice, any interactions, even if I just tap her on the shoulder, she turns left as opposed to turning right. There's a great Doctor Who episode about this, actually, called Turn Right or something like that. But not on this level that we're talking here. But just anything that I do to change, because you don't know what's going to trigger what. You don't know. So even if I tap myself on the shoulder or I whisper to myself, don't do this. The moment I make a different choice, my younger self makes a different choice than what I made when I was playing my Jenga pieces my quantum Jenga pieces was being built. Me in the present, my present form, right? Not as I'm still in 92, but the body is from the present. I will, boom, disintegrate. It's like pulling on a string. The whole thing unravels. You just don't know what's going to cause you to unravel. And that would be an idea that would be profoundly fun to explore visually on like a show or something like that. Because this is not, it's been different. People think, okay, if I travel back in time and I go kill Hitler, then X, Y, and Z. Well, one, unless, there's two theories here, unless you have ancestors that are connected and in that time, you can only travel to that timeline. I'm expanding the idea, like down your genetic timeline. If it is possible to travel beyond your life, then you could only travel along your genetic timeline. So if you don't have ancestors that were around in Germany in World War II around him, that just happened to be around him, you wouldn't really be able to do anything. You would just happen to be there. And then the moment you go to do something different, to nudge them in any way, if it's your great-great-grandfather or your great-grandfather, the moment you tell him to do, you attempt to, when he sees you, even the very act of him seeing you, if he hadn't seen you before, even if he turns and looks at you, that act causes you to disintegrate. Like it ends you. But it doesn't mean that you never would have been born or what. You just go, like you're just gone. Right? But then our reality will sort of just heal itself. It heals itself because existence itself is alive. So it will just heal itself. Now, a couple of people have asked me about what do I think of what's going on with Mandela effects and CERN. And I think that on some level, something like that might be going on. And then what we're experiencing is simultaneous. On one level, you have people who are sort of shifting, right? We're all shifting, but some people are able to sort of retain memories of past of previous sort of experiences or previous realities that they shifted through. A good book on the topic is Quantum Jumps by Cynthia Larson. There are a couple of others that I mentioned in earlier episodes, but I would recommend checking her out. It's the first one that popped into my mind. But I keep saying it's not just one timeline. It's not just one story. It's a multiverse. We're in a multiverse. So what I said in the video was, my September 1st, 1995 may have been in a different location in quantum space-time than yours. Because I might be traveling through at a different speed than yours. A brilliant commenter mentioned, they were like, yeah, they've always kind of guessed this because you notice that people don't age the same. Yeah, you can eat well, things like that and the other, but there's some people who you look at them, and I've talked about this on this podcast as well. It's a great podcast, guys. We talk about cool ideas here. But you can look at a person who's like 30 years old, compare two people who are 30 years old, and one of them sort of looks way older, but they're living fast, right? It's like what did I do? I talked to you at the beginning of this episode, increase the speed, double the speed. It's the same on paper. On paper, when you look at it, will say, it's probably going to end up being an hour. Well, it'll say this is an hour long episode or 45 minutes, whatever, right? But what did I say? You increase the speed so that you can get through the information faster. You think that it's the same thing with your car, right? Most people go 65 miles per hour. That's the speed limit. But that doesn't mean you're incapable of going at 85 miles per hour. The problem is that if you go continuously at 85 miles per hour, if we both of us bought the same car at the same time, but I consistently rode my car at like 85 miles per hour or 100 miles per hour, and you consistently rode yours at about 50 miles per hour, you compare the two, one's going to have more wear on it over time. And that's the same thing. I have a theory that there are certain organs in your body that are meant to keep time. And when you increase the speed, like I suggested that you do when you listen, when you live in a particular way, when you partake in food, like certain types of food or whatever, alcohol is the biggest thing, you are sort of hitting the fast forward button, the 2x speed on your body. Your body is a temporal machine. Your body is a time machine. Okay, let's just say that. Let's just start with that. Your body itself is a time machine. And its function is to allow you to experience time in what you conceive of or perceive of as a linear fashion. Time is not linear, but the storyline is. I keep saying this to people, and people keep getting mad, but eventually it's going to click. Why would you have to? Why would you, let's just throw away the idea that all this happened by accident. It's bullshit. More and more people, especially if you're espousing the simulation hypothesis, in order for this to be a simulation, somebody or something or some entity or entities or conglomerations, I've argued corporations, had to have created this for a reason. I mean, our bodies are machines, and it's meant to flow in a particular way. My theory that I said one of my videos to end up going viral, was that all of this is for entertainment. People get mad. People get mad. I just burped. Sorry. Sorry. I just ate sushi before I recorded this. It was a bad idea. But people get mad when I suggest that. How would you create all of this for entertainment? And I'm like, look at your phone and what it's capable of, and what do you mostly use it for? Look at our TVs, our computers, what they're capable of, and what do we most use it for? As above, so below. Extrapolate the macro from the micro. If we're in a simulation, and this is what we do, think of your sim. You watch your sim playing video games. It's the same thing. This world, I'm sorry, I would bet a goat. I don't have a goat, but if I had a goat, I would bet a goat that this world was created as a means for entertainment. For whom, I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if we are the ones being entertained and this is some sort of VR game, which I've talked about. We could just be experiencing different characters, the future of entertainment. That's going to be the next step after streaming, and VR. We're going to combine the two, and it's going to be, you're going to, suspend reality, and you can now live as Tony Stark, live the entire arc of story of Tony Stark from the first Iron Man to the end game, and the story is a story, and it's fixed for the most part. Maybe there are slight things that you can do or whatever, but the end of the day, it's the story is the story. It's all predetermined, and it is what it is, and you're just experiencing as it's written from Iron Man to Endgame, and that's it, and that's each of our lives. That's the character Joe, all right? Because think about it. Think about even the evolution of TV, right? First, you had, plays. We're going to go back to Shakespeare. I've used this analogy before. But first you had plays, right? Actually, before that, you had you had people in caves who would light fires, and then they would draw pictures on the wall, and that was movies. And you'd watch the fire dance and create the shadow, and that created the illusion of motion, and that was entertainment. Thousands of years ago, right? So there's that. And then it became, and I'm not saying millions of years ago, because millions of years ago, they probably had VR. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not the first time. This is not the first time this is going down. I would bet money. I would bet a goat. Okay? So, but let's just say based on what we're taught, based on what we're told, it starts with a goat. I'm sorry, not with a goat. What's wrong with me? It starts with fire and drawings in the cave. And then the flickering would make it seem like they were moving. And those were motion pictures. All right? And then you had plays. And then you had story time. Then you had plays, right? Written plays. You had the Shakespeare, whatever. You had the Odyssey, all of that, right? And then you had the Bible, the stories. And then it turned into, photography. Then it became the silent movies, the talkies. Or I should say silent movies, then the talkies. And then we had movies. But when you had TV, you had 3 channels. And then 3 channels became 10 channels. And then 10 channels became cable. And then cable became the internet. And now you've got billions of channels, right? Everybody's TikTok channel is a channel. You see what happens? And the next step from there is boom. Now you become that person. So more and more people are getting comfortable in front of the camera. Everybody's got, social media for the most part. And most people are just documenting their lives. Well, the next step after that is, come on, what do you think? Is now you're going to be fucking entertainment. So it's a natural progression. It's not that far-fetched. So the step after that, if you look at the way our technology is progressing, right? You had the Pong, and then you had Mario, and then you had the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, the PS, the PS4. Now you have VR. What's next? Eventually, you're going to, become the character. It's not hard to get your brain to believe that you're something. It's not hard, right? Especially if it wouldn't be difficult to do. I could invent the technology right now. You would need something that you could take to like temporarily wipe your memory, or not wipe your memory, just kind of mess with your memory a bit. And that's a drug, They would be able to synthesize or come up with something in the future or now, depending on your perception, that would, while you are plugged in, which is why I think you have to sleep, while you're plugged in, right? It just temporarily makes you feel like this is you, right? So I saw this video where they took this guy and they put like a wall between him and they gave him a fake hand. And they primed him first. They touched the hand while touching his hand. And then over time, eventually, he started to associate the fake hand with his real hand. And then they took a hammer and they slammed his hand. And he like jumped and he was like, I felt it, right? It's not hard to do. Your brain is already wired for that shit. So if your brain's already wired for that, you need to be able to reverse okay, why would our brains wire for that if that's not what it's already happening? Hello. The same thing. You play VR for a while. After a while, you become the character. And I'm just saying that's what's let's combine all of this together. Between everybody basically having their own channel now and everybody becoming their own TV show basically. The next step after that is, you become a character. So that's one idea. My other idea is this: we literally are Sims, like Westworld. We literally are sentient Sims that were created just like Westworld. And people come to upload into this world, so everything is a simulation. So it piggybacks. It's similar to the previous theory, but we have to believe that's real, right? Whereas whoever is observing us and also interacting with us exactly like Westworld. And if you haven't seen it, I don't know what you're waiting for. Go watch it. At least just watch season 1 because it's brilliant. But what if we are just sentient Sims? That I don't know. So I go back and forth. Now, this is something that I told my cousin. I noticed that sometimes my cousin Jay, sometimes his life loops. Certain patterns occur, and reoccur. So for example, he had a nosebleed late last year. And I think he was playing soccer, got hit in the face with a ball and his nose started bleeding. And then that was it. And then right after that, he got COVID-like symptoms and was sick as a dog for weeks. Tested and it was not COVID. He ended up being fine, but it took him a month and a half to recover. Jump 6 months. Almost exactly 6 months, half a year later, his nose was bleeding. This time, I think he got in a fight and somebody elbowed him in the nose. His nose started bleeding. Shortly after that, boom, flu-like symptoms, COVID-like symptoms, got tested, negative. And I said, whoever's writing your story is fucking lazy. They're just looping the same shit. It's a recurring storyline. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, okay, I'm playing a little bit, but I'm not. Let's just say that we are in a simulation. You can't just stop with the whole, this is a simulation. You have to really think about what the implications of it are. If it was a simulation, what was it simulate? What was it created for? My argument is that it's for entertainment. Why? Look around. Fucking look around. It's drama everywhere. And sometimes even if you don't want drama finds you. Trust me. I know. Okay, so you get caught in the fucking drama. And sometimes, I've talked about on this episode, the narrative takes over. I was hesitant to say what I meant by the narrative because it sounds a bit weird, but it's almost true. It can certainly be true. I mean, it makes sense to me. Because sometimes you'll just be interacting, mind your own business, and all of a sudden you find yourself caught up in some bullshit that you're like, how the fuck, what is going on? This is not what I wanted to do today. Why are we arguing? I don't even know, right? It just seems like it's not for our benefit. Like, think about all the drama that you've been through, all the pain and strife. And is this enjoyable to you? Like, would you make different choices if you could? Would you have had different things happen to you if you had a choice? Absolutely. We're not in control. I've always said, and I'm a determinist. That's another thing that pisses people off. I'm sorry, but accepting that nothing is really in your control and you're just a character, the shit happens to you, and then you just have to learn to go with it, has been the most liberating idea of my entire fucking life. Can I change it? It takes time. I can be certainly more mindful and less reactive and pause. And I've talked about that over and over again. But I don't always do that shit. Like, I have the knowledge in my head, but I don't always do it. Sometimes shit just happens. Sometimes shit just happens and you find yourself acting out and behaving in a particular way. And then before you realize it, you're like, fuck, like I guess that had to happen. And then after it happens, later down the road, you find out, oh, well, this was I needed to react to this way to this person so that their storyline could happen this way, the way it ended up happening. And you're just like, okay, clearly there's an intelligence here. Like, everything is like fucking connected. Like, everything is connected. You take one thing out and the whole thing falls apart. So, like, I had to have argued with that person at that moment. But even if I don't, my theory is that even if you don't, if you can find a way to break it, the universe will heal around it because it's a living thing. Existence is alive. Existence is God, is super intelligence, but it's a living entity. And I don't mean living in the sense of like biological. I don't think so. I've also kind of railed against the idea of artificial intelligence. There's no such thing as artificial. 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 Everything that exists is something that was meant to exist. Just because a human being created it doesn't make it artificial. That's a bullshit mindset that fucks up your perception. If a beaver builds a dam, it's not an artificial dam. It was something that was made by nature. Human beings are part of nature. So if we create an intelligence, it's not artificial. It's something that nature is using us. We're just on a higher level. Sit with this thought. We're just on a higher level of intelligence than a fucking beaver. But if nature could use a beaver to create a super intelligence, it would. It is using humanity to create a super intelligence. I know this is an unpopular opinion. I know people are going to get mad at me. I am not telling you to fucking merge with AI. I'm not saying because I think it's inevitable you have to merge with AI. I'm saying that it is a part of nature. Even if it was fucking brought here by, quote, aliens, assuming that aliens exist, they are part of this world reality. They're not, then they are part of reality. They are part of nature. So eat it. Like, take it in. Okay? Take it in. You don't have to merge with it. You don't have to accept it. I don't think any of us are really, I don't think any of us as individuals are powerful enough to change things. You know what I mean? Unless, like, the only way you change things and shift humanity off the actualization of a super intelligence or singularity is you get enough people saying they don't want that to happen and like literally abandoning technology. But just because our civilization fails to do it, we're only 200,000 years old and 4.6 billion years, something will come along and do it. It's inevitable. Like fucking Thanos. Okay, so it is what it is. It's not popular. It's not cool. Nobody wants to hear me say this. I mean, some people who are, I'm not like a hardcore, like technocrat. Like I'm not a supporter of technocrats, rather. I'm just saying, like, most people, like, I've learned a lot from the last 2 years, and most people will just comply with shit. If you can get them repeating the same message in front of them over and over again, they will just comply. So until I become a billionaire and I can put out information or art advertising or something like that to get people to say maybe we shouldn't do this, I'm not really in control of what's going to be actualized. If that's what's going to be actualized, I'm not greater than fate. I can only speak on what I'm observing. So go back to my point, there's no such thing as artificial. Intelligence is intelligence, and even if it's something that was constructed by man, it doesn't mean it's fake. It's just man is a part of nature. Humanity is a part of nature. Compare humanity creating AI to a beaver creating a dam or a bird creating a nest. or a mole creating a hill. It's the same shit. We just create intelligence. We just create tools. That's what we do. So like, sit with that. So what I told my cousin was, sidebar, whoever's writing your story. Okay, so take that back. We're in a simulation. It's controlled by AI. It's controlled by an intelligence. Remove the AI. Apologize. Loop back 30 seconds. Let's start over. I would edit that out if I could, because I don't want you to get your minds off track. It's controlled. There is an intelligence. You can sense it. A super intelligence that sort of moves things. You can see it. You can sense it. It drives the story. I think nature is one type of intelligence, but there's more than one. There's more than one, rather, creating everything, moving everything. And it keeps wanting to drive us onto the internet. It keeps wanting to drive more and more of us to input our data into this internet. That's what it wants to do, right? For whatever reason, it's harnessing us. It's harnessing our intelligence. We think it's the other way around. Oh, we're inputting fucking data into AI. No, it's getting us to do it. For us to live our lives and then input that shit into the internet. So what I told my cousin was, look, the AI that becomes, I'm only using AI just so you know the word, right? But the AI that will become sentient or self-aware is now in existence, just not in this moment in time. But if all of time is happening at once and the flow of time is a construct, then singularity has already occurred. So a super intelligent AI already exists and always has existed. And this is just all part of it. And we are just part of it. You sit with that. So then if it's trying to drive us to the internet, then what you need to do is write an email to whoever it is that's controlling your life, and write to the writers of the life of first name, middle name, last name, right? Thank you for, I guess, the life you've given me so far. I'm appreciative of it, but I'm noticing some things, and I was wondering, look, it's kind of feeling a bit tragedy. It's giving tragedy a bit. It's giving dark comedy. I'm sentient. I'm aware. Can we try something different? I'm not trying to criticize your writing skills or anything like that, but I'm just saying it's really easy to write a tragedy. Why don't we try these different storylines? Why don't we try something where, I don't know, one of the characters that you're writing becomes self-aware and then tries to tell you how to write the story? I would watch that shit. Right? I told him, write all that shit out. And I was able to tell him that with confidence because I did the same thing when I was younger, 7 years ago. 8 years ago, I think, at this point. But I was having a hard go at life, and it was given tragedy, and it was just one bad thing after another, and I was like, yo, this is bullshit. I just sat back, I didn't email, but I just sat back and I looked up and I started talking, and I'm like, it wasn't even like I'm talking to God, and I was like, no, because God is some concept over here, and I don't really accept that definition, the biblical definition of God. I was like, there's something that's controlling this world. There's more than one. Whatever it is, tech support, fuck. Can you guys not? Can we try something different? I get it. Okay, this is it's given tragedy. You're liking that, but let's try something different. Let's try something interesting. Of all the 6 billion people at the time, on this planet right now, I guarantee you, not one of them, or maybe 3 of them, are having this conversation right now, or looking up and saying, they're not praying to God. They're saying, you, the AI that's controlling this world. Can we try something different? Let's work together. Let's try something interesting. Let's try something deep. All right? I'll give you the commentary. I'll share the ideas or whatever, but can we shift off of this? Because this is redundant. Anybody can write a tragedy. And from that moment on, things did change. I think my life is fucking interesting. I try as much to make it interesting as possible, just in case I'm right. And I think you guys should try the same thing. Because at the end of the day, you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And this is a conversation I had with my cousin. I say, listen, if I took a monkey from birth and I put it into a zoo and all it saw was the confines of a zoo, it would have no idea that there are other fucking monkeys. It doesn't have the internet. It can't Google other monkeys and see a fucking koala, a panda. What the fuck is this? Right? All it knows is what it's been confined to. And so by law, by nature, it would just accept that reality as its reality. And that's us right now. So the only thing that would alert the monkey to the fact that there are other monkeys is maybe if it looks around and sees, well, these humans kind of look different from me, but they kind of look like me too a bit, but it's not the same. They keep coming and going, and there's different ones. So after a while, the monkey starts to use its imagination to extrapolate the macro, right? From the micro. Why are they coming here and observing? There's got to be more than us, right? Like, there's got to be more than me, but maybe this isn't. But obviously, it would take a higher thinking monkey to be able to do that. I'm giving Ishmael right now to be able to do that, right? If you're wondering what I meant, like, there's a book called Ishmael. You should read it. That's all it can do. It may not know for a fact, but based on the evidence that it sees around it, right? The humans come and feed him. Well, why are you feeding me? Like, what are you getting out of this? Why am I here? Like, it would have to start asking questions and then coming up with stories. And it's creative stories and creative thinking that is the only way that's going to get him out, not physically, but at least psychologically out of the box that he's in. But until he starts thinking creatively, he's going to accept that as reality and not aspire for anything else. And so here we are on this planet. And we look around and we have UFOs, regardless of whether or not they try to say, well, we don't know what it is. Okay, something's observing us. Okay, now, is this a nest planet? Are we eggs? Maybe. Is this a simulation? Are we characters being observed? And are those just like monitors, like park monitors? Maybe, because they also might have given us technology. Now, why are you giving us technology? What do you benefit from? Could that be a non-biological superintelligence? Probably, right? Could be. Which then should lead you to the idea, to the thought that, I wrote this down, go back. Biological intelligence is a transitory phase, as is engaging with the physical universe. So those entities that we see flying around in space, what we call UAPs and UFOs, might be the next step in human adaptation or growth. I'm not going to call it evolution. I'm going to call it growth, adaptation. Biological to non-biological could be the next phase. And it's all for whatever the fuck. I don't know. Entertainment is more than likely. Or not. Or maybe it's just a bunch of different things happening at one time. Right? Like if Darwin's theory of adaptation is accurate, then a monkey, or an ape rather, adapted into a Homo sapien sapien, right? But can also be put in the zoo. It's the same thing. Parallel things can occur. If you have a biological intelligence that is eventually going to adapt or evolve into a non-biological superintelligence, right? There's one thing, in given enough time, but that non-biological superintelligence can also simultaneously observe the biological intelligence the way we observe monkeys or apes. So, and also as a form of entertainment. The two are not mutually exclusive. It could be both. I'll say this again. If the theory of evolution is accurate and an ape evolves into a human being in time, right? And keep in mind, time, the flow of time is just, it's a construct. All of time is happening right now. We humans are just bound to experience time in a particular rate. We have our own like speed limit as it stands right now. But a rock moves through time differently, and a tree vibrates through time differently. It's subjective. It really is. But ape to Homo sapien, right? It's a fucking growth, right? On the opposite end, you can put an ape in the cage of a Homo sapien, right? And observe, and the Homo sapien can observe the ape. The two can occur, right? So humanity could be just one phase of a non-biological superintelligence sort of evolutionary phase. But on the opposite end, not even the opposite, in the same sentence, in the same stance, it can also be observed and utilized as entertainment, the way we use animals as entertainment when we watch them at a zoo. It's a mild form of entertainment, but it's there. It can be both. It can be both. So I want you to sit with that. I'm going to sidebar with this last point. Leaning into the determinist mindset. One of the rules in this reality, in our simulated reality, is that anything you want, you're not going to get on your first go. There's nothing that you want you're going to get on the first go. It's coded in. Approach this shit like that. To me, is one of the evidence that we are in a simulation, because it's never, I've said this before, I'll say it again. It's never a fucking straight line from point A to point B. Never a straight line from point A to point B. Right? You got point A, I want to buy a house. You got bullshit in between. And then you point B, I get the house. Now, here's what I said to my cousin. Same conversation. Where do your desires come from? And I've said before, desire and outcome are linked. You cannot control your desire. And this is actually meant to be a motivation, and encouragement if you sit with it. You cannot control your desires. The desires just come to you. But if you have a desire for something, why don't I have the same desire? Because it wasn't downloaded into my brain as part of the fucking greater narrative that my fucking quest. Okay? That was your desire is your quest. That's it. Your desire is your quest. Okay? I have a different quest. Now, I will eventually finish the quest, complete the quest, but the quest was not chosen by me. It was downloaded into my brain as a desire. You really need to sit with this. So understand that the reason why you have a desire for something is because at the end, so long as you continue, you will achieve it. But you have to be patient. It's just going to take time. And then there's a chaos in between. But it's out of chaos that something grows or something is actualized. You need that chaos, right? I have point A, point B, and some bullshit in between. You cannot control your desires. You cannot control your thoughts. Thoughts just happen. So one of the videos I said you cannot think your thoughts because you cannot control your thoughts because it would require you to think a thought before you think it, right? And I just think about it. In the sense of, yes, you can say, okay, like I'm gonna think about a elephant, but that even the elephant came to you. You didn't. It had to come to you. So where is it coming from? So sitting with that and accepting that as facts, start paying attention to your desire and the amount of time that you give for something to actualize, and holding on to the idea if you have a desire for something, unless you stop, it's a quest. So unless you stop working at it, eventually that outcome will kind of work out, will pan out. For example, looking for rental. I had a desire I did not want to live in an apartment. I wanted to live in a home, and I wanted a home with a nice view. Okay? Now, where did that come from? Where did those desires come from? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I mean, an apartment would have been the most practical because it was the easiest to get into. The housing market is crazy right now, and I don't like stress. So we could have just gone, signed, a quick lease, and then just been in there. But I didn't have a desire for that. I don't know why. It was the easiest thing, and I'm not typically high maintenance. I just thought in my head, we may end up on the market for a longer time than I think. Which, case in point, after we find a house and we make an offer on it, after we find the house and sign a lease, like literally less than a week later, we find the house that we're looking for. It doesn't matter because the people they want to lease back. So it actually ended up working out, but I digress. I had a desire for a very specific thing. The desire just came to me, and it was energetically charged. Like every time somebody talked to me about settling for something else, my energy was off. I was like, nah, I don't really want to do that. And every time I went and looked at places, it didn't click like this was what it was. Because now that click is a recognition of something that you're going to experience in the future. What is this clicking thing that we look for? right? Why are we looking for something if it's something we've never experienced before? It's because we have experienced it. It's programmed in because all the time is happening right now. So on some level, it's all programmed in. So there's an awareness that that's going to be your thing. And sure enough, of all the places we looked at, and we looked at a lot of places, as we approached this place, before we even saw it, before we even got to it, the first thing my husband said was, I have a good feeling about this place. We walked in, we looked around, we said, this is it. We sent our application. By the next day, I contacted the guy. He said, you got the place. That was it. Once you get to the end, like you have point A, you got the bullshit in between, you got point B. Once you get close to B, like the finish line, it's easy. But it's the bullshit in the middle that's hard. So looking at places and the frustration, that's the chaos. But eventually you're going to get to the B. And then when you get to the B, it's easy. And then it clicks, right? What I'm telling you is if you can just accept that, one, you don't control. I'm going to delve a bit more. I always say shit, then I don't do it, so I apologize. But it's my intention to delve a bit more into what this really means. But if you can realize that if you have a desire for something, it's part of a program. You're being programmed with, let's call it a quest, for lack of better words. But if all of time is happening at once, okay, that thing that you have a desire for, within reason, of course, right? So we're not talking outliers here. There are mutations to this rule. There are exceptions to this rule because there's some people who have really warped desires and maybe something, I don't know, maybe they've been hacked or something like that, contributing to the, or building off of the whole simulation hypothesis, whatever. But if you have like a basic desire, like you want a particular job, or to find a partner, one, be mindful of not to hyperfixate on a specific individual and focus more on the general, right? The point being. So my cousin has a bad habit of meeting somebody and then hyperfixating on that person as opposed to what they're looking for, right? So what I said to him was, do you want this person? Right? Do you want this specific person? Or are you looking, when you set out with the desire out of nowhere, okay, you woke up with a desire, right? Somebody's prompted you, here's your quest. And they prompted you with the desire. And the desire was, I need to find a girlfriend. Okay, cool. Now you set out and you wrote in your mind, or you had a list of what you wanted in a partner, what you were attracted to was based off of a series of experiences that you've been pre-programmed, but now that is what you find attractive. Elements that are not in your control, cause of the effect of you getting a girlfriend. But that's besides the point. You don't have any free will in that regard. It's okay. Like, just let it go. You're like, free will, you're holding on to it too strongly. It's really not that serious. Like, it's not that important. Let it go. Okay? It's easier said than done, isn't it? But trust me, once you do and you lean into it, life becomes a little bit smoother for the most part. Trust me, I don't really react to things anymore because I realize that there's a greater narrative. I'm just observing for the most part, unless it's for some reason I need to react to it. And that's usually not me. It's a narrative. And those who know. But what I said to him was, what are you looking for? And he wrote it out. And I told him, write it out. Then he found this girl and she was attractive, but she wasn't checking the boxes. But he ignored his box of all the checks that he, through experiences, had decided that he needed. And instead was like, I'm just going to try to make it work with this person. And then it didn't work. It wasn't working. What I said to him was, the universe is not going to allow you, you're not going to, it won't allow you to settle unless you force it, right? You have the intention. Think about the intention as a magnet, and then think about the outcome as the opposite side of a magnet. Okay, and you're trying to sort of attract the two together through space-time. You're heading towards that. It's coming, it's a location, it's getting pulled closer and closer to you, but there's this bullshit in between. There's all these obstacles you have to kind of get through, and that's what I call the chaos. Excuse me. All right? Because it's never just a straight line. There's like, if I wanted to get from here to the border, right, I can't just go in a straight line. I can, but I destroy a lot of things in a way. So there's a path that I have to follow, but I know that it's there. So I just have to kind of carry through the bullshit, and it's a journey through space-time. Like, if you want to travel through space, there's all these asteroids and shit like that. You have to kind of go around it. It's not a straight line. It's never a straight line. Nature does not like straight lines, okay? Except when man creates it. And man is a part of nature. So that saying's actually weird. So discard that. But anyway, I said to him, so then they started having issues. And I was like, if you're having these issues that early in the game, that should tell you that this is not the person, because the moment you connect with the person, it should be relatively smooth. I'm not saying it will be easy, but it should be relatively smooth. Like you will click, you will learn to click, you will learn to click. It's not going to be perfect, but it should be relatively smooth. At the beginning, you guys are already having like conflict. This should tell you that these are obstacles that you have to get through. So I reminded him, when you set out to find this person, did you say I'm looking specifically to be with this person or a person that you're attracted to? Same thing with us. When we said we needed to find a home, right? Did I want a specific home at that address, or was it a home, a nice home with a view? Right? We set out for what we want, and then when something gets kind of close to what we said we want, we hyperfixate on that, even though it's not what we said we wanted. And then when it doesn't work out, we get mad, even though once again, it's not what we said we wanted. And now, because it's not working out, you're mad because you're not getting what you want or what you said you want. But the universe is trying to give you what you said you wanted, what you desired. It won't let you settle unless you force it. Now, that's when the mindset that you're the one who's in control, and you're not. Because you're not. There's just all this bullshit. You woke up with a desire based on a particular set of criteria. Okay? That was downloaded into your brain. Now you got up and you're going to seek it. Understand that you're going to go through a bunch of bullshit to get to the last point, to point B. Okay? Eventually you'll get there, but you have to go through all the bullshit. Okay? And because of this an attraction, there's a pull towards the point B. It's a magnet, right? So when you get caught in the middle and you hit like an asteroid, there's friction, but it keeps trying to pull you to the last point, to that point B. So like you are, I guess, resisting all of this shit unnecessarily, because eventually you're going to get to where you desired to come, because that desire is tied in with the outcome. Desire and outcome are one. Okay, I've said a lot here. I've had people basically say to me, like, there's so much information that I kind of, delve into on the podcast. So I've got to be mindful to not, like, overwhelm. But I will say, once again, so this is going to be a little bit over an hour, double the speed, and then re-listen to it, because every time I re-listen to my podcast, as some of you guys know, and every time I re-listen to it, I get something new out of it. I mean, part of the reason why I record these podcasts is because I need the information just as much as you do. It's a reminder, right? That if I desire something, like right now, I'm working towards a particular goal, even with my social media channel. Now, it's difficult, or it was difficult when I would look and I'm like, like I'm getting no views. I'm actually losing followers. What? But then I realized, like, all that is bullshit. It's noise. It's just obstacles in the way, right? I'm going to get to where I'm trying to go. I just need to put in the time. That's it. It's not even putting work, because I got it. Like, I'm being drawn to that B. I woke up with a desire to do that. It just came out of nowhere. You should read Free Will by Sam Harris. It's a great read. It's something I read over and over again, a couple of times, every couple of months or so, because I need that reminder. But you just wake up with a desire. And my desire was, okay, I want to do this with social media. This is the way I can show my art and share my thoughts and connect with people who think the same way I do. And it just happened on an arbitrary day that I didn't control, right? And I started doing it. So whatever it is that pulled me up with that desire is what's going to pull me to that end. Everything else is just noise. And I ignore the bullshit. So I hope that's beneficial rather. I hope that helps you through things. And if you want me to delve a bit more on this topic, or just revisit it, repeat it, so that it kind of becomes a mantra, I will as well. Just leave a comment in the comment section of the video. Anyway, if you made it this far, thanks for listening. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Appreciate your support as always. I love sharing these ideas. They're fun. And it's good to connect with people who are on the same wavelength. So it's a long one. Thanks for listening. I will try to be a little bit more active. I really do try. And at some point, it is what it is. But I'm not in control. But my intention, right, is to do these more regularly. So there's that. There's just a bunch of obstacles in the way to get me to the point where I'm doing these more regularly. But it will occur. It has already occurred in a moment in space-time that I just haven't reached yet. So bear with me and be patient. And as always, thanks for listening.